Items from the public that are not on the agenda. Sandy, you want to give?
I had a question for when can we find out another traffic calming request?
Sam, do you mind?
Why don't you go up to the microphone?
Yeah, sorry, we tape, and for the big audience at home, it would be helpful.
Okay, so the question I have is when might we get insight into other traffic calming requests that have been submitted as far as being posted on the website?
Right, and you submitted on Riverbend, right? And
Yes.
you submitted your petition, and we're collecting data. I don't know if the tubes have been out there yet, but we've.
No, you guys only had traffic counters and speed counters on recently.
Right, so we'll be collecting traffic data over the next several weeks while school's in session.
Excellent.
And then we'll compile that, and we'll probably have a neighborhood meeting, call your group in, and we just had one at Pitkin. We'll probably have one with your neighborhood and talk about what could be potential traffic calming measures out there. So
All right.
over the next month, I think we'll probably have a neighborhood meeting.
Okay.
And then from there, depending on whether we can reach some sort of buy-in with the residents about what to do, then we'll take it back to this committee who will review.
I have been asked a lot of questions by a number of the folks who signed the request.
Okay.
And they're concerned, and they're not seeing anything. And so I'll go to the meeting tonight.
Right.
So
Right.
and find out.
Okay.
So thanks, Alex.
Sure, thanks. Okay, next item, we had a discussion about safe routes to school several months ago, and I contacted school district, and Landon Hilliard is involved with transportation at the school district, and Landon's here to talk about what he does and their program, and to answer any questions you have on safe routes to school.
Okay. Does that pick up from a distance, or do I need to stoop? You're right. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. Hello. So I'm Landon Hilliard with the Boulder Valley School District, and Alex was kind enough to invite me here to discuss briefly what we do with Safe Routes to School, and then field any questions that you may have, really as a foundation to keep talking, which is why I'm happy to be here. So Safe Routes to School, if you're not familiar with it, is an alternative transportation program that's meant to reduce the reliance on the automobile and support the health and safety of the school community. And so we do that in three basic ways. One is we tackle the traffic problem. Second is we make investments in safety of all sorts. And then the big one is we promote cleaner and healthier and smarter transportation options. So the whole idea is to try to thin traffic in front of schools, promote the health through physical activity, and make our streets and school zones safe and comfortable for all users, no matter the age or ability or how someone comes to school. So we have the school district has close partnerships with the municipalities, and I consider the town of Superior one of those, because our wheelhouse is mostly education and encouragement, which means things like bicycle education during PE time, a class called Bicycle Friendly Driver, which is a share the road approach sponsored by Boulder County. We have a dynamite rewards program called Trip Tracker that encourages students to walk and bike and even ride the school bus, and rewards them with dollars that can be spent in the community. So we try to throw everything at the issues. And just to give you a sense of how we're doing, and this is not in particular for El Dorado K-8 or Superior Elementary, but just in general, we think that if we looked at the pie of modes, that about 20% would be walking every day, about 20% would be taking the school bus, about 7% would be bicycling, and about 3% public transit. So if you add those numbers, 20%, 20%, 7%, and 3%, you get half of the pie. That's really alternatives to the automobile. The other half of the pie, the biggest slice in the world we live in, is automobile travel. So we're doing everything we can to reduce the portion of automobile travel and move it over to walking, bicycling, school bus, and transit. And as I walked in we had a short discussion, Carlos and I had a short discussion about the school bus ridership at Monarch High and Monarch K-8, just across the road. We figure that about, in total, 700 students in the morning ride about 15 buses or so from all of the Louisville area to those two schools. So think about the percentage of the total enrollment, which would be about, that's about 30% of total enrollment of those two schools, and think about the number of cars that are taken off the road in that way. So for Safe Routes to School, it's really all of the above approach, walking and bicycling, of course, for active transportation and health, but also public transit and the school bus is how we're thinking about it. The last part of it is carpooling through the Denver Regional Council of Governments program called School Pool. So I think that's the gist of what we try to do. Of course, they're thorny problems. We're up against, at least in my world, the dominance of the automobile. And we're trying to do what we can to, again, to have a safer and more comfortable, less stressful environment for anyone who wants to walk and bike and try to move things in that direction.
So, thanks. I've got a couple questions. So first, I mean, these are approximate data. Are these approximate data for the town of Superior or this Boulder County? And how do we get better, more accurate data?
That's a good question. They are approximate data, and they're an amalgamation of one-off surveys and other assessments we've done across the district through Safe Routes to School. What we don't have, and a weakness of the program, is a comprehensive measurement program to know exactly what the mode share is. But by putting together these numbers over the years of student tally surveys and parent opinion surveys, this is what we've come up with.
And that's for Boulder Valley wide, not
Boulder Valley, right? All 56 schools. Safe Routes to School focuses on kindergarten through 8th grade. Sometimes we think that high schoolers are, beyond remediation. And anyway, but even with high schools, that's what we think is about the slices of the pie.
So my sense for our two elementary schools, for both for El Dorado's K through 8 as well as Superior, is that it's a lot higher than 20% walk-in.
I'd say so. Because Superior has such excellent walkable neighborhoods and a beautiful bicycle trail network, yes, it is generally higher, especially on sunny days.
So what can we do, and we get a lot of those here, what can we do to better measure those? I'd like to know how we're doing, and when I saw you were presenting, I was kind of hoping we'd have some data for our town.
Right. I could pull surveys that are now somewhat dated from both schools, and we could also think about resurveying if we could have the compliance with a couple of school principals. Your school principals now have come from schools with strong walking backgrounds. Kent Kruger was for years at a school called Bear Creek, and John Camelli was for years at a school called Cold Creek. Yeah, Bear Creek and Cold Creek. And so they are, I would say, have an affinity to promote walking and biking. And so we could talk about how to get another survey going just so we'd know. We'd like to know, my colleague and I, Peter Hurst with Safe Routes to School program, would love to know, have better idea.
Yeah, I'd like to know, and I think involving the school administration, involving the kids, and trying to, whatever the number is, and trying to move the needle on that number, I think would be great. I have another question, sort of related around your data on public transportation. I really like what I still call the Cullen ride, but it's now the Flex ride, right? Mm-hmm. Although I see the Flex ride take at least 2 stops every day with 1 child being dropped off. It doesn't feel like that was the intent of Flex Ride. And I'm pleased that that child is using it, and I'd rather have that than presumably that's the only mode of transportation. But it's putting 1 car in a big bus, 1 child in a big bus instead. What data do we have around that? And is that I don't have data, it's just anecdotal experience because I happen to walk the dog at the same time one of these kids drops off by herself every day.
At what school?
El Dorado.
El Dorado, okay. The Flex Ride, just by its nature, is somewhat inefficient compared to fixed route service in high density areas, but it does pick up the scraps of people who need a ride. We have not promoted it The school district has not promoted it. RTD to some extent has, and 36 Commuting Solutions, the transportation management organization, has. I think we could easily find the ridership numbers from RTD, and if we wanted to promote it, especially to the older children, we could use it in some ways as a more flexible.
Well,
No,
my
that's
sense
not your
is,
question.
I like it to be promoted. I just want it to be more, and I don't mean this, I don't know the situation with this particular child, so maybe it's a bad anecdote, right? But it seems so inefficient to have, there's probably, how many seats are in that bus, 12?
15, 20.
50, you know, to have one child on the bus that's being dropped off when it just feels like maybe it should be promoted so other kids can use it. And then we do occasionally, by the way, get complaints from people that say they can't use FlexRide between 6:30 and 9:30 a.m. because it's consumed by kids. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, at some point I'm like, okay, well, just because they didn't vote doesn't mean that, you know, they can't use our amenities. So I don't know how I feel about it, but what's your, I guess there's a pack, I'm glad you're here, so I don't know.
I know we can get the data from RTD, because I know Monarch has a little higher ridership. I know several students are using that.
Monarch, that makes sense, right? Because they're going to get better ridership, but it's the Eldorado that I was sort of.
The other comment I want to make, you know, RTD just put in a discounted fare for youth, and I'm not sure, has the school district promoted that? Because it seems like that would make it a little more economical to ride RTD to
It's always been
schools.
50%.
Yeah.
It's now 50% for a medium tier, but for students, it's 70%. So a typical $3 fare for a local ride on the RTD is now only 90 cents for a student. So we've put out information. What, in fact, we're working towards in the school district is some kind of bus pass program, an eco pass program for students, or college pass program for students. There are some other fare products that we're thinking about to make it easier and more convenient to ride the RTD, and those could be applied to the FlexRide. But back to the FlexRide, anecdotally, I think you're right, Alex. It's just several who are riding to the Monarch schools, and even then, the FlexRide has to go over great distance just to pick up a few passengers. So it's not the most efficient system the way it's built now, and I don't think it's actually appropriate for students who have probably access to school bus service. But that's another discussion.
So which goes to, but I do like, so I want to hear more about the school pool through DRCOG.
Right.
And I'm not aware of any, we get a lot of communication from BVSD. I've got a few kids in the program, right?
Okay.
In school there.
Yep.
I don't ever remember hearing anything about school pool and any program like that.
My colleague Peter Hurst has a school pool network at every school in the district. It's probably up to the principal to promote it, but it's in place as a placeholder. And the idea is opt-in. So parents have to hear about it and then make an effort to sign up on the Way to Go website and then join this network. The philosophy behind it, obviously, is that it connects people for rides to school, but it's also kind of a social connection that can be used in other means. So we put it out there, but we don't follow up and promote it heavily, and we don't know the uptake at schools. It's another resource that's available to parents to try to reduce car trips and
But
have
it's
options.
completely, so if I understand, it's up to the individual school administration whether or not they want to program, whether or not they want to pursue, and then it's opt-in for the parents.
Yes, but this
So
my
great,
guess
so
is-
I'll tell you, great, sounds like a great program.
Yep.
It's never been promoted to me.
Kevin, when we enrolled at Eldo K, it was heavily promoted to the
Okay.
incoming sixth graders. We tried to opt in, and we found no other carpool riders, other than ones that we already knew. So it wasn't very effective in trying to find new people, but it was promoted, 3 years ago. I don't know if it still is, and that might be the change.
Yeah, I just don't remember,
yeah.
there's a lot of communication, so I don't remember.
And that's something else we could raise awareness about.
Yeah.
But again, we have many schools, and the school principal is really a strong linchpin for making these alternative programming.
Yeah, that's what I
work.
really want to see.
Just so you know.
I mean, I love the idea that the young lady who's taking a 15-passenger bus by herself every day is instead taking the fourth seat that's available in another car, and if she has access to that or her parents have access and it's a safe situation, that sounds like it's going to be a lot better for everybody.
Yep.
Landon, I had a quick question, and I appreciate you coming in because I think this started with a conversation I had with Alex 9 months ago when Monarch High School changed its start time, because I've been paranoid about Campus Drive for the last 9 months, and thankfully, the K-8 changed its start time, so everything's a little less worse. You mentioned 700 kids are going to Monarch. Is that the K-8 on buses or both schools?
Both. Okay, 15 buses altogether, both schools.
And the 15 buses includes all the buses in Superior as well. So you said in Louisville, and I just want to make sure that's actually the 3 or 4 that are in Superior as well. Okay.
It's everywhere in the attendance boundary of the Monarch K-8 and the Monarch High, so that means across the highway.
Gotcha. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. The other question I had is, and this is for Carlos as well, Louisville's been working on their transportation master plan, and one of the things that they've touted is the fun routes to school, the mountain bike trails. And, as I thought about Campus Drive and trying to avoid any cars going on that thing, because it is a massive bottleneck, how do we encourage kids to ride their mountain bikes on the bikeway trail over the bridge and down Campus Drive? I mean, are we allowed to plow a mountain bike trail next to the bikeway trail, or something to encourage, because we have a lot of elementary kids in downtown Superior, the Sagamore area, that all go to Monarch K-8, and they do not have they have 2 buses, so that the buses are there. That's great, and I think the ridership is really high. But for the kids that want to walk, or walk is too far, how do we encourage them to bike? Because that that would help, again, the bottleneck that is Campus Drive.
Yeah. Well. The school district, as you may know, has 2 big encouragement events district-wide in the fall called Walk to School Day, and a bookend in the spring called Bike Week. So we, at a district level, try to promote walking and biking wherever we can and give an excuse to parents and children to ride. At a school level, it really comes down to parent engagement and what parents are interested in the same outcomes that you have, and organizing and giving permission to students. But they're all worlds of strategies and support that can be made for something like a bike train, where a group of boys and girls get together and ride. So there's an idea of safety in numbers and socializing and just the fun of riding bicycles together, and it has to do with the culture of the school. And so we've seen at some schools, and Monarch to a certain extent at the high school, that the promotions and the uptake of walking and biking at the K-8 level is transferring to the high school level, where we're asked to expand bike parking yearly, it seems.
Sure.
It's been a little slower in this community, but all the pieces are there. And so really it's a matter of, I think, having strong leadership from the principal, and signaling to a school community that this is expected and encouraged, and then having parents who want to coordinate it. And once it has some momentum, it really does roll on its own. Okay. That's kind of a fluffy answer.
No, it makes sense.
But that's the way we think about it.
No, I used to ride to school in a bike gang too, so it's not something that's you see very often any longer, but it does make a lot of sense.
I've heard it called a 6-pack, if you have the right number.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, of course, yeah. I thought, Alex, did we have some pressing issues or some standing issues? I can't remember.
I think the TSC has made some comments all the time about Rock Creek Parkway and getting students across Rock Creek Parkway. So you may want to just comment on that.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So Rock Creek Parkway being the arterial that it is, and is it signed for 30 miles an hour? But
35.
35, but 20 during when
and 35, and then there's a school zone that's 20
miles an hour, yeah. Is a place where we suggest caution, but we also understand that with proper training and with parent chaperones, that it's a perfectly safe street to cross. So we don't put any prohibitions on Rock Creek Parkway, except to say that use your best skills at crossing the street. If you're at a certain age, always travel with your parents. And when you're a little older, then there's some guidelines to do. In fact, years ago, we used that intersection in Indiana and Rock Creek Parkway to film a crossing guard safety video sponsored by the Colorado Department of Transportation. And I'll tell you now, I don't look like a movie actor, but I was in that. Just joking. But so I'm familiar with it. And yes, what we're looking at in general, with Safe Routes to School is the safe design of streets. And Carlos could talk at length about this, but having a pedestrian median refuge, having some place to shorten the crossing distance using different pavement markings having proper signage, all the tricks of the trade for engineering are things that we would suggest and work with the town if we were in the right position to do so, to outfit that an intersection like that.
Not to put you on the spot, but Cold Creek Drive and Akron, an issue with moving the bus stop. I don't know if you had a chance to check up on that.
Where are we with that?
Okay.
Golly.
I think we're working with your bus.
Will you remind me of the issue?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna pull it up on the aerial up here, a little bit down a little bit.
No, so
Up, right in here, yeah.
Yes, right there.
So, thanks for coming tonight. We, this summer, we put in some median refuge islands here, and we removed some left-hand turn pockets. And the idea was that with those living in that zone, I'm gonna zoom in so we can see. So we have these left-hand turn pockets were deleted, and median refuges were installed. And one of the challenges we were having without that was that the buses were dwelling here, and people were passing the bus, even with the stop sign out. So we installed the median refuge here, and we installed one up there.
No, just one.
Oh, just down here. Okay, yeah. And then we were hoping that the bus could dwell here, stop here, which would further prevent vehicles that were driving northbound. They'd have to actually go like around a bus and a median into oncoming in a very narrow lane to be naughty, as opposed to today just kind of bypassing them in the left lane. The bus currently drops right here. And so we were hoping to get a change so that the bus could dwell here. And then when that happens, once the kids got off, they could use this crossing here. So they'd be crossing in front of the bus, not the back. And they'd have double protection. They'd have protection from the bus, the stop sign would be out, and then they'd have what you just described as a median refuge. One of those would live right in that zone.
Okay.
So we're asking if we could ask the route configuration. And I know one of the things that happens is I watched it last week, it does a circle down here. So the route comes in here, it does a circle in here, and then it comes back out and goes north. So it shouldn't be a big change, right?
I don't think so. Have we got an official response, Alex, or is this one of my jobs that I...
We're working with the people, and they've changed it, I think, in the bus routing area, so.
This should be a simple request.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning, I'll ask about it. I think that I've emailed about it, and I just don't know where it stands.
That'd be great.
And then I will communicate with the two of you
Great.
when that's done.
Okay.
Are there any other particulars around this that we have that I should bring up with the school bus schedulers?
The only...
It looks straightforward to me.
It is pretty, the only, this is Akron. So this is Akron and Cold Creek Drive.
Yeah.
So if you could ask them if they have any issue with, instead of stopping north of the intersection,
Right.
they could stop at the south leg of the intersection so we could take full advantage of the safety features of that mid-block crossing.
Well said, yeah, that's good.
I get not mid-block, it's a pedestrian refuge
Yeah,
island.
I knew what you meant.
Okay.
Anything else?
So I think what I'm taking away from this is a need to have real data so we know how children are coming to school. Look into school pool and how it is communicated through the school community with maybe a little more oomph for it. And then the school bus issue, and then anything else?
I'd love to see also perhaps some data on the flex
Oh, that's
flex
right. Yeah,
ridership
that's the
that
fourth one.
Trustee
Yeah.
Ryan had mentioned. I think that's something that would be worth discussing. How much do we want that used by children getting to and from school?
We know we see a baseline of one child every day.
And I've certainly seen others.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, I've called at 7 a.m. and been told like, yeah, no way we'll get to you until after school's done. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave, but please know that the school district is always open to speaking with the town, and through Alex and through Carlos, we'd like to try to continue to improve conditions and see more walking and biking to school.
Great.
Thank you. Great. right, so the next item we have is removal of the Waldona Way stop signs. As you recall, the town board decided to permanently close Waldona Way last year. Was temporarily closed in September of 2018, and a permanent closure was completed in June of 2019. And then TSC asked that we evaluate the need for all-way stop control at the Waldona Way intersections with Elmora Court and Adalia Court. And then report on the removal of the cost of the speed humps. We did take traffic counts in mid-October of 2018 after the Waldona closure was in place and school was in session. The average weekday traffic was measured at 570 vehicles per day on Waldona Way east of Idalia Court. And the 85th percentile speed was 22 miles per hour westbound and 19 miles per hour eastbound. The traffic volumes on Idalia Court and Elmora, we didn't actually take counts, but we estimated that there are less than 200 vehicles per day. We did ask one of our contractors about the cost of removing speed hump, and they estimated about $10,000 to remove one speed hump. So the manual on uniform traffic control devices are the guidelines used throughout the country for installing traffic control devices. They have procedures or requirements for multi-way stop applications, as well as when to install traffic signals and signs and all that stuff. So we looked at their criteria and tried to see how these stop signs stack up. And one of the criteria is that multi-way stop control is used where the volume of traffic on the intersecting streets is approximately equal. And the volume on Waldona is about triple the volume on Elmora and Idalia. Also, some guidance to install multi-way stops should be based on an engineering study, which this is kind of a traffic engineering study. One criteria is where traffic control signals are justified. A multi-way stop is an interim measure. So when you have so much traffic that you're having congestion issues and safety issues, you may want to use multi-way stop in lieu of getting funding to install a traffic signal. Traffic signals are not warranted at those intersections. Safety, so they have specific criteria about safety and crashes. And you need five or more reported crashes in a 12-month period that are susceptible to correction by a multi-way stop installation. So those crashes would be right turn or left turn collisions. Probably wouldn't apply to run off the road collisions or hitting an animal, things of that nature. So we've had reported 2 accidents on Waldona Way within the last 8 years. So it doesn't come close to the safety, the crash criteria. Then there's minimum volumes. There's a vehicular volume for the major approaches for at least 300 vehicles per hour for any 8 hours of an average day. And Waldona averages about 70 vehicles per hour during the heaviest times. And then there's a combination of vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle volume entering the intersection from the Minor Street approaches, and that has to average at least 200 units per hour for the same 8 hours. And we estimate that Elmora and Idalia average less than 20 vehicles and bikes and peds per hour versus the 200 criteria. And then if the average delay to Minor Street traffic is at least 30 seconds per vehicle. And we did not estimate this, but we feel it's much less. There's little delay when Elmora and Idalia intersect, when the traffic comes out of those intersections and try to get onto Waldona Way. And then there's speed criteria where you can reduce those volumes by 70% if the street speed is greater than 40 miles an hour on the major street, Waldona Way, and the 85th percentile on Waldona Way is less than 25 miles an hour. So those are pretty much the criteria. Again, these are cul-de-sacs. This is a situation where it's a freeway stop and there is much traffic on the side street. In some, we would, based on the above analysis and the presence of speed humps on Waldona Way, along with the physical closure of Waldona Way at 88th Street, which limits the volume and speed of traffic, staff recommends removal of the stop signs on Waldona Way at Elmora Court and Idalia Court. As far as the speed humps, I think the two west speed humps still serve a traffic calming purpose. We would recommend keeping those in place. The east speed hump is kind of at a dead end, the dead end section of Waldona Way. It probably is not needed at this point, but we can't justify the cost of removing that at this point. We would wait until we do some major maintenance work on Waldona Way before we remove that particular stops that speed hump. So that's the staff's analysis, and put in your.
That was very suspenseful, Alex. I like it. held us to the end. Staff recommendation: remove the stop signs. I recognize the warrant analysis was required. I think that was something we were amenable to last meeting. Warrant analysis was required, and further conversations.
No,
Yeah, and we've had several requests over, since it was closed. Do we really need those stop signs anymore?
Great. Good.
Yeah, I just have a philosophical question. I mean, obviously I am biased because I sit on the corner where the stop sign is, and I've seen enough delivery vehicles blast through the street. And I think it's a problem we have throughout town, where, this is a finite neighborhood. There's 100 homes. I know if anybody's speeding, the absence of that stop sign around the blind curve is a part that worries me and will continue to worry me. Because fundamentally, we're talking about removing a traffic control device in the Traffic and Safety Commission. And I haven't wrapped my head around that because, arguably this is going to increase the speeds. So if the analysis at 19 to 27 miles per hour, so that's only going to go up, right? Because we know the stop sign is effective at least slowing people down. The speed bumps are helpful there as well. And, I wanted to at least have a debate about this in the sense that, we've never as a town removed a traffic control device.
Well, the stop signs were in there
to slow people down going across on the cut through.
And also as a deterrent.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they were put in there.
Fair enough.
I wasn't on the TSC when they were put in, but.
No one was. Is it 80, late 90s?
I mean, I would imagine it was as a deterrent. And now, the volume is significantly less. And, arguably, having a stop sign and some impression that somebody's actually going to stop, as opposed to, okay, there is no stop sign and let's be cautious and have people actually stop and roll through. We are still going to have the speed bumps, which are, now these speed bumps are true humps, right? You could hit them at 24, 25 miles an hour. Yeah. And, unless you're driving a low profile vehicle, it's not that big a deal. But, I am a little worried now about the crosswalks that are there, right?
Right.
So were the crosswalks repainted this year? Or what do the crosswalks look like these days?
They look about like that. Yeah, they haven't faded too much.
We would probably remove the stop bar. Right.
Right. But I like the crosswalk, and the law is you stop when there's a kid in the crosswalk, but I am slightly worried that a kid is going to hit the crosswalk or have an expectation that the stop signs are removed. So I agree. I think it's worthy of a conversation. I would not be supportive of removing a stop sign, except for the fact that the stop signs were put in as a deterrent, which we have, as a town, solved for.
Yeah, no, I mean, this conversation makes sense because the closure of the street changes everything in terms of the dynamics of the street. and it's a worthy discussion, which is why I want to have it. I mean, I'm not opposed to removing them. It's just the philosophical question of, if we start, in the, perfect examples of conversations we're going to have on Pitkin, because we added a stop sign, and, in the traffic calming meeting we had last week, there's some people that don't like the stop sign there, and, arguably at some point we can see, and this is fast forwarding, is, people may ask to start removing stop signs because they don't see the value, whereas, I think implicitly they help reduce the speeds. If we have people going, and I forgot what the number was now, 24 with the stop sign, and they're going to start going faster.
I guess what I wonder about with the stop signs and the accompanying speed humps there, in other parts of town, we typically don't have them so close together.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And I think it just encourages people to go over the speed bump, gas it, slam on the brake for the stop sign, gas it, slam on the brake for the next speed bump, et cetera. I think we'd be better served, by just having fewer of them so people are respecting them versus, oh, I just slowed down for that speed bump, so now not that I do this, but probably some people might think I'll just go through that.
Yeah, ever since the closure happened, the stop sign, people aren't stopping, they're rolling through, but they're slowing down, right? So between the humps and the stop signs, people are definitely slowing down. So, I'm
Alex, I have a question for you. I know staff's recommendation is to remove the stop signs and then keep the speed humps.
Yes.
If the speed humps weren't so difficult and expensive to remove, if we were designing this from scratch, would you tend to favor stop signs or speed humps?
Oh, definitely a speed hump.
Okay.
In this case, they're unwarranted, and people come up to the stop sign and they seldom see a conflicting vehicle. So it's just, we don't want, the whole purpose of the manual and uniform traffic control device is you want to have situations and signs that mean something, and a stop sign where there's no reason to stop, is not, detracts from the purpose of a stop sign.
Sure.
And there could be a situation where people are just blowing them all the time. They don't expect traffic, and then that one day when a car emerges, there's a safety issue.
That makes sense.
Carlos, you made one.
All I was going to add, it was last week we had cameras out and we collected video of stop sign compliance on Pitkin. We've been watching that.
On Pitkin.
Along Pitkin.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have that video up later to watch.
We're going to see that in December, and we're going to see it at the neighborhood meeting. And I think it'll change your opinion rapidly. And I think the data is in the video. I don't have to tell you, I'll just show you the videos. And so, I was thinking about what you said. These are no longer warranted, right? The reason why we're taking them out is because they present a safety hazard now. They didn't before. But they do now. And the thing that I want you to kind of dwell on and think about a little bit is the acceleration, if you're stopped going eastbound to that hump, is 166 feet. Okay. In the absence of having that, you're going to make a turn around this corner. And so you're going to come out at that corner, and now you're going to have 314 feet. So we're not talking, I know you have a high-performance Audi or Tesla. I'm not sure what vehicle you have lately. But the notion of acceleration in this context and how much additional speed you can gather in 150 feet is negligible.
Okay.
And so if this was a long, like Pitkin is an example, where we have a quarter-mile stretch.
And it's straight downhill. There's other streets in town like Amherst and Andrew Lane or Andrew Way where it's, long decline without any stop signs. This street,
Castle Peak.
This street is an anomaly, throughout, so much of this town.
So press me on that in December when we have the videos back. And I mean that, when we have longer stretches, then we have some probably more acceleration-related challenges, stop sign. But in this case, and the one that's really interesting is if you take it out here, right? So now you have 130 feet of acceleration compared to, I don't know, let's call it back here, 321 feet. So you're talking about another 150 feet of acceleration. I can't do that math in my head, but you have to have a really high performance car to get up to that speed before your very low to the ground high performance car needs to brake to get over this thing. Okay. So I think in this context, it's not warranted / the acceleration speeding difference that we're going to see is going to be negligible.
Okay.
Yeah, and
that's fair.
It also, it doesn't have 100,000 cars anymore, right? I mean, that's
No, that's the
everybody in
huge
this neighborhood.
aspect of it, yeah.
You know, at some point,
Let's move on.
when the red car drives by with the foot on the gas, taking advantage of 320 feet instead of 140 feet, somebody's going to have to politely knock on the door or call the sheriff's office and say, can you please ask this person to stop speeding?
So, while we're on it, one of the issues the neighborhood has had is the sign pollution. There are an excessive number of signs. So if we're going to keep the speed hump down here, there's a speed hump ahead sign right here that literally no one can look at because there's no one turning. There's another one that's buried in a tree over here. There's also a sign right here that says 25 miles per hour this way. The stop ahead signs, the stop signs. I think removing the stop signs, I can definitely see the point of view, and I can appreciate it. If we could divest ourselves of some of the vertical assets. There's 3 signs that say no outlet now in the neighborhood, so I think we know. So
I don't disagree with that. I did not want to talk about Weldona this year, and specifically asked not to talk about Weldona this year. If we're going to have a conversation about sign pollution and do something, let's do it. You guys twisted my arm and said, let's have this conversation. I think we spend way too much time talking about Weldona in this neighborhood. I think sign pollution is an issue, and traffic and safety should handle it, Q2 of next year. But no. Sorry, but I don't think we should direct staff to pull out signs at this point. So I recognize that sign pollution is an issue there. It's a huge issue everywhere in this community, and I just don't think it's quite fair to respectfully walk.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, it's just a function of, in the context of this street versus others, this one has had far more put on it, which as part of the closure would have been nice to just wrap them at the same time. We didn't.
Yeah, get rid of that
so
sign.
There's, in that street, there's literally, or that part of the street, there's 5 signs because there's a speed hump sign as well.
Right,
I
pulling
think
the stop sign makes sense.
Yeah, and the stop ahead signs too.
So sorry, which were the other signs you wanted?
There's a speed hump ahead sign, there's a speed hump now at the tail end of the street that 3 houses are in front of. So no one can physically pass one of the speed hump ahead signs because there's no one turning off of 88th.
I see.
There are no parking signs too on the north side that we pulled as well.
Right. So anyways, Kevin, I completely agree. I didn't want to have this conversation anytime, in the near future after the closure, but we obviously had, emails from residents that wanted us to do something about it. And we got the data, and I'm happy to move forward.
We just have so much to, it's a big town.
Oh, I know. I know.
How many miles of road in this town?
A lot.
We have 40 miles of centerline roads, 90 lane miles, so 40 miles.
This half-mile stretch gets a lot of attention.
No. Well, staff will send our memo to the board and digest and say we really don't need action on this, but the staff, this is our recommendation, and we'll put in the digest that we're moving forward with this. All right, thanks, Lane. Move on to more fun stuff. Surveys.
We talk about, was it Pitkin?
Pitkin first.
Pitkin's first?
Oh, neighborhood meeting on Pitkin. Okay.
Okay. All right. So we had a neighborhood meeting a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, with the Pitkin neighborhood.
Week and a half.
Okay. Neil attended that meeting. We had great turnout. I have some summary slides here, and I can show you the presentation if you'd like as well. Let me go back to here. Sorry. Slideshow. Okay. So we had a great turnout. We had 19 residents in the room, and we had someone from each street, which was great. So it wasn't just one street. There was some concern before about only one street was notified and contacted. We had representation from each street. I don't believe anybody was there from ILIF, however, now that I'm saying that. I don't think.
No, there wasn't.
There was no ILIF there, so that was the only street that didn't have anyone. And we'll work, again, to try to get someone from ILIF at the next meeting. What I was really, I think, pleased by was everybody was willing to work together. There was clearly a camp of folks who live on Pitkin who are kind of getting a lot of the through traffic, and folks who are living up the street, Carville and Rogan. They all kind of identified themselves and then also identified each other during that conversation, which was really great. There was a lot of kindness in the room. We only had one person get up and leave in the beginning. I think they were just frustrated because of the process, but everyone else stuck around, which was great. We did an exercise where we actually had them, before we showed them the 85th percentile speed data, we actually had them write down what they thought the 85th percentile speed was. And probably, as no surprise to any of you on TSU who've been doing this a long time, the perception was a lot higher than the actual speed. So in the packet, I included the results from what they thought the 85th percentile speeds were compared to then what we showed them. And that came up quite a bit. I think at the end, people also in the neighborhood realized like it's more of a perception than an actual data, or perception versus maybe the reality of the counters. So that was good. We had a couple data wonks in the room, and they wanted to know how the counters were set up, how they worked. We had a conversation about 85th percentile, which was great, and what the mean and all those other things were. So Neil helped me out on that because he's the data scientist. So the feedback from what's going on out there is that the speed hump out there, it definitely is slowing traffic, and everybody, whether you lived in front of it or up the street, realized that it does slow traffic, but they weren't too wild about the design. And so some people have some lower profile vehicles that tend to be harder to get over. Some people just don't like it. They think it looked kind of gaudy. You know, they thought it was a permanent solution. Some folks thought that, and so we clarified that. But they said, yeah, I guess it slows traffic, but isn't there something else we could do? The other issue that came up was stop sign compliance, particularly the stop sign compliance at Rogan and Pitkin. There were a couple residents who had lived there for quite a while who had mentioned that the stop sign compliance there is really low. Like I said, we actually, as a result of this meeting, went out and got more stop sign. We're going to have stop sign compliance data now. We're going to bring that to them at a next meeting. And then they also it was funny, they talked about enforcement. They wanted to see more enforcement.
I wanted to hear from you.
They want more tickets. And what was interesting was that someone said, well, we need more enforcement. And then one of the neighbors said, well, actually, there is enforcement. I got a ticket, I think earlier in the summer, and said, I actually rolled the stop sign and I was fault. And, and so but there was this kind of pulse of like, they wanted to see more of it. There's also this pulse of they kind of knew a couple of the offenders, and they wanted to knock on the doors, but they didn't feel comfortable, so they were kind of working that out as a group. Alex or Neil, was there anything else that you kind of heard in that conversation? I'll talk about next steps in a minute, but anything else that's worth summarizing?
I think there's just sort of, it's an interesting point, and I don't know if anyone's reached out to Troy directly, because there's a Westminster policeman that lives on the street, and I think he wanted to touch base with Boulder County Sheriff just in terms of how to do enforcement. So I'll leave that as it is, because I think the point that Alex had made is it's really hard to hide a police vehicle on that street and not have people just start slowing down. So I think the more enforcement kind of begs the question of how do you do more and try to hide the cruiser, which I can see that. It's just like you said, we have 40 miles of roads, and I think we got neighbors everywhere that have similar complaints. So I think the more enforcement I have no problem with. It's just a function of bandwidth.
Yep. Alex, anything else that you recall they wanted to summarize there?
There were comments that there's other parts of Pitkin and not just where the neighbors live. Farther up towards Carlisle, they wanted some measure up there. We did talk about trail crossings, and they seemed to favor that. They would like something that would enhance some of the pedestrian crossings. And the Riverbend stop sign seems to be kind of accepted. I mean, they thought that was probably a good location for it. The volumes we showed them the volumes, and the volumes are pretty even between Riverbend and Pitkin at that particular location. So that's an area where, from a volume standpoint, it's a good location. You would expect a stop sign there.
And actually, Alex, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know early on we had some complaints about that stop sign in the hill when the street's a little snowy, which that never came up last week.
Right.
I think that stop sign, the three-way there, is a brilliant addition to the street, because it sort of decelerates the potential acceleration down the hill.
Show them this data.
Yeah, so this is something we were doing. It was really good. The neighbors were really picked up on this. They said, well, where did you take this data? And when was it taken? And so the good news here is we took a lot of data points. So we took a data point on the entry into the neighborhood. So this is just a little west of the Riverbend intersection. Vehicles per day and then the 85th percentile speed ranges. So instead of presenting one 85th percentile speed, now what I'm doing is going into each hour and showing the range of 85th percentile speed. So this is not just 85th percentile speed, us picking one time. This is from, I believe this was from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Every hour I went in and got the 85th percentile speed. So we're showing the ranges here. And then the other thing we're doing is showing directionally what the speeds are so that you can kind of get this uphill, downhill phenomenon. So we're getting really rich with the data. This is one of my I should win an Academy Award for animation for this. So so we showed other points in the network. So this is between Ruggin and Riverbend. So you can see the downhill speeds here picking up a little bit, right? We're getting that 20, 27. And then right after the speed hump, you have a little bit slower speed going uphill, right? You also, the other was interesting is you could see the traffic kind of reduced a little bit. So about 564 vehicles at this point, 289 here. And then you're going further up the street, fewer homes, less access, 173 vehicles. This is right after the stop sign here, 19 to 27, approaching the stop sign, 16 to 26. And then one final data point up the street. All right, so this goes uphill here. This is up on a hill up here. So going down the hill, 19 to 27 miles an hour. Going up the hill, this is where we were scratching our head a little bit.
Yeah.
The 31 miles an hour, right? But you can see back here is 126 to 131. So if you were actually, one of the things we said, remember our amazing new checklist that we have? And one of the things on the checklist is you have to have 500 vehicles a day to be in the program. So if we drew this line right here, you probably wouldn't be in the program because you only have 126 vehicles a day. If you drew it here, probably not. There, probably not.
Oh, there, no, that's okay because it's total, right? So.
This one, yeah, thank you. Alex is making me add both directions. Thank you. You're right. Yeah, so there, you're probably getting in there. You're definitely in here. So what we're trying to do is kind of not just get one data point with the counter. We actually had a other company go out and get multiple data points. So they like this. We spent a lot of time talking through this, and this is a place where if you see that list, people are thinking 35, 40, 50 miles an hour in perceived speed when it's actually in these ranges, depending on what time of day you go out there. So just a little more data that you've asked for and we're presenting.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to bring the 85th percentile down to an hour-by-hour basis, but I think you're sort of, your N is going to get pretty small if you're looking at 85th percentile when you're hour by hour. So I think it might be helpful for a neighborhood meeting. 85th percentile is important data for this committee and to make important decisions. I think if you're bringing speed ranges hour to hour, 85th percentile, I think you're sort of clouding the speed ranges hour to hour. I think speed ranges hour to hour would be cool data, but not at the 85th percentile because the N is getting pretty small there.
So, yeah.
Particularly as you get up the hill.
Good point.
Let's not do that again.
Okay.
So, may I give you some feedback?
Sure, can you go up to the...
You want to just go it?
So the stop sign that you put in there at the intersection of Riverbend and Pitkin, one of the things that I've noticed, I just live a few houses down on Riverbend Street, is
He's
in the
on
winter.
Riverbend.
So you got to go to the very first stop sign on Pitkin.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Right there. So when you put that stop sign going downhill, this past winter, I noticed almost no cars overshooting and hitting the curb on Riverbend Way. So before
I gotta slow down.
Because of the slant of this road here, there were always lots of cars over here avoiding in particular. And so traffic would back up and people would have their alignment out. But I didn't notice that happening.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just with that one stop sign right there.
Interesting.
Even though people don't stop all the time,
Yeah.
they slow down quite a bit more and
Yes.
they don't overshoot in
Interesting.
traffic there.
Interesting. In the winter months.
Good feedback.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, something's good coming out of that.
Okay, so we will not do that again.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's just, when I see 20 to 24 miles per hour at 289 vehicles per day, and I know that's not, I don't know exactly what to do with those data because it's 85th percentile data. I mean, I'm really, I think if we're going to look at 85th percentile, we need to look at 85th percentile per day, over a period of time, not break it down hour to hour. I think our data scientists would say, well, wait a minute, we're starting to pollute the intent of the 85th percentile, which you guys have convinced me, 85th percentile has a singular purpose that I understand. And it is roughly the speed for which people feel safe to drive as the road is designed.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so now do they feel safe to drive 20 miles per hour when it's between 8 and 9 a.m., but they feel safe to drive at 24 miles per hour? The very fact that these numbers have such wide ranges, to me, mean the 85th percentile should never be looked at again. You've basically disproven the 85th percentile.
I think it's just the N is too small.
I understand.
Yeah.
But if I hear an argument that, no, this is actually a good data use, then the 85th percentile is completely disproven. I mean, this is like paper publishing, peer-reviewed journal stuff, because the 85th percentile is supposed to be the speed at which people feel safe driving. People are not supposed to feel safe driving different speeds based on different times of the day. Or maybe they are.
Oh, I could absolutely see that being the case.
That is the case.
If it's night and you can't see, maybe you go slower, or maybe you go faster.
Faster,
I don't know,
yeah.
But you're right.
But that's fine. Then maybe we should start studying road design based on a twilight time of the day instead of maybe the 85th percentile doesn't work because you're including nighttime where people naturally drive slower, and let's not. It's just. There's a lot of things to think about with this, and I think we're...
So to me, where I like the 85th percentile is it tells me this is what the majority of people are driving. There's always going to be a few people going those crazy speeds. Like I'm sure, Alex, we probably clocked somebody going like 75 miles an hour on this where we'd all scratch our head.
There's probably an outlier that there always is. So
to me, 85th just really gets rid of the outliers, but says this is what most people are driving.
Now we're mixing statistics because you can't have a majority with the 85th percentile.
That's exactly not what the 85th percentile.
Right. So if you're doing both, then we got an issue with data.
So let's agree that the 85th percentile has been used for the last 30 years, and you've convinced this committee it's a good thing to study, but if you break that hour to hour, let's just be thoughtful.
It's fair enough. So I won't do it by hour. What came up on Rock Creek Circle and why we did it here was up versus downhill, right? And so I still think it'd be worth breaking out uphill versus downhill, but just not doing it hour by hour. Would you agree with that?
I do like the directional cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But in terms of solutions, I think there is some consensus on
Let's go back to here.
a median island to narrow the road. So we have some way, because right now it's 34 feet and not a lot of parking. And so if we can narrow the road and force people to slow up because they have to go through 12 feet of pavement instead of 34 feet of pavement. So it seems like people seem to like that. I think the speed hump, there was more consensus than I thought there would be, and I think it was more, speed humps wouldn't be that so bad if they were designed, and what I've noticed about the speed humps, the one we have now is about 6 feet, maybe 6 feet wide. It's still about 3.5 inches high. So it's the same height as we have with our other speed humps, but the other ones we widen out to 10, 12 feet. Some of the ones we did in Waldona, I think, were 14, and we felt that wasn't, effective enough. So I think we're honing in on the actual width of the speed hump, and I think it's more like a 12-foot wide gives you the right feel. 3.5 inches high and 12-foot wide makes it uncomfortable to go 35 miles an hour, but you feel it. But it's not that bad to go over at 20.
So then with this group, we talked about next steps. So Alex has pulled the speed hump, and now we're going to get data after to see what the speeds are without. So we'll have the same analysis. We won't have hourly, 85th percentile, but we'll come back and show that data. We're going to collect that in the next week or two. And then, as I said before, we're doing stop sign compliance videos, so we'll be able to present that back. And then we agreed with the neighborhood group that we'd come back and meet with them sometime in late October and bring some conceptual designs 2 or 3 different designs. Alex was just beginning to outline those for the corridor. And based on the toolbox that we showed them, and then we would get their feedback in November, and October, November would be the timeline. And then the idea would be that in the December TSC meeting, we'd present back the results from that second neighborhood meeting with them. So you get information about stop sign compliance, what happens when the speed humps are removed, and then more feedback from the neighborhood on designs. And so that's what we report back in December. So we're hoping to just schedule the next Pitkin meeting. I think we were shooting for the end of this month, early November. We have to be able to get the new traffic data with the speed hump out and process that, so we need a couple weeks. So that's Pitkin.
So just a question, and I've obviously, I've known some of the neighbors on Pitkin for a long time, and a couple of them are a little disappointed in the speed at which we're getting things done, just because they brought this to the board a year and a half ago. And it's a question of, if we have the meeting in December, how fast can we even implement something, since it's winter? We're talking late spring. If the consensus is, a raised pedestrian crossing or a speed hump, what are we talking about in terms of timeline to implementation?
Well, I think if we're talking about a speed hump or, an island, well, first of all, we have to, clear it with you in terms of budget, Of course. And once we get that okay, we'll have, contractor on board. We have an on-call contractor that's done all our work this year. And, we normally do that. We bid that out last year, so I think we're okay for another few years with that contractor, so we can work with him and get it in the spring.
Because I think the perception, and this is an important part, is that the speed hump, temporary as it was, had a material impact on the speeds. And a number of folks, and they raised this at the neighborhood meeting, are worried about what's going to happen now until some sort of permanent solution gets put in.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to just see the raw data, right? So we had evidence that people were not complying with the posted speed limits before we had the speed humps and the one single additional. We have speed data prior to the stop sign, prior to the speed humps and one of the stop signs, correct? Or is it just prior to the speed humps?
Well, we don't have we have a data point that is close. We have 4 or 5 data points here, and one that is right in the area near the speed hump. So it's not right at the speed hump, but it's a couple hundred feet away. So we get the effect of the speed hump.
So now we've pulled, so I want to see the raw data before the speed bump, the raw data with the speed bump, and now we've pulled the temporary speed bumps, and let's just get that third data point.
Yeah, we'll get that third.
And people revert back to an 85th percentile at 29 something miles per hour with the outliers at 35 to 38 miles per hour.
Right.
I don't feel compelled to have another neighborhood meeting. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's sometimes we could talk about a longer term solution for a road redesign, but we have a safety problem on this road that the Traffic and Safety Committee needs to think about. And if we all think that 29 point something miles per hour at the 85th percentile is safe, then we should make that decision. I guess I'm with you. I want to talk about why we're having, I guess I didn't quite digest the fact we'd have a second neighborhood meeting talking about things in the toolbox. I kind of thought that was the first neighborhood meeting, talking about things in the toolbox. We'd have a few different data points, and we'd come back and we'd have a dialogue, because now, let's think about this. We've asked the people from this neighborhood to come to at least 2 traffic and safety meetings, 2 neighborhood meetings, and now there will be a 3rd traffic and safety meeting that they're coming to. Like, at some point, over a roughly 2-year process.
1.5 to 2 years, yeah.
Why can't we just skip the next neighborhood meeting?
Because we're close. We're real close to having the neighborhood buy into this. And I think they're going to feel it's their plan rather than we're jamming it down their throats. They're coming together. They realize there's some issues here, and I think they're all kind of working together for a solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin, I was with you on this, but as I think about the emails we've been receiving about it, particularly from the end of the street, from like the Carval area, I think we need to make sure that we're having everyone buy in.
Well, and I mean, I think credit to Carlos and Alex, the neighborhood meeting is, I'm finding the two that I've been to exceptionally valuable, at least having that dialogue, because here you can't have a dialogue, and those neighborhood meetings are very conducive.
And that's what I don't think people
Fair
realize.
enough.
We sort of
It's true.
keep it as an informal process.
Yeah.
People from the neighborhood want to come. We've never told somebody they can't.
Yeah.
Just so you know, that before the speed hump was installed, we have one point right here. The camera was shooting this way, so these are vehicles going downhill here. The 85th percentile speed was 29 miles an hour.
Yeah.
When we did this data collection in the end of August this year, when same point, BVSD was in session, the 85th percentile speed was 20 miles an hour.
With the hump.
With the hump. So yes, we dropped 9 miles an hour. We went below the posted limit. We got compliance with the hump. I think everybody was in agreement with that. Why the process is yielding input that's, I think, helpful, and they're willing to go, they want to be part of one more meeting, is they want to talk about what other countermeasures in this quarter could be made besides that hump that would have a similar effect. I think there's people saying this is an effective tool to do this. The neighborhood up here on Carval is saying, I get that you need residents here to be calmed. Can we do it besides besides that hump? Because that doesn't seem to be working for us. And that's where they think the state of the conversation is now. And I believe if we have this meeting with them, we'll be able to come up with some design solutions where they'll come to the December meeting, people from each of these blocks, and say, I was part of this process, and this is what we all want to do together. And so I think that's what's coming next, at least we hope.
It's right. All this ends with raised crosswalks, and so, I mean, forgive me if I'm not the politically correct person, but the right answer for all this stuff is street redesign and raised crosswalks, because aesthetically it's better than a speed hump.
Right.
But let's follow. I understand that this is terribly disruptive to the community, and we're taking your advice on trying to better engage the community. But we just can't let this go. We are shutting this off. I'm personally shutting this off at 2 years. So from the first day we talked about this, which I'm going to look up, we need to be done talking about this road 2 years later. Just the same, apply the same. I don't want to talk about, well, I don't think we should have Weldona.
Right.
Like that feels like a reasonable thing to do.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay, so in the spirit of keeping these effective and on track, we wanted to show you the results from the survey and some ideas that we have for short-term actions, and then some actions for next year's budget, so that the 76th and Sycamore and the Rock Creek Circle intersections could happen within the 1-year timeline. Okay. All right, so let me get the proper materials up here.
Okay, go to
Yeah,
that.
so we're starting with 76, right?
Yeah, it should be up there.
Okay, so,
One more.
Yep, sorry, where am I?
I got that.
okay, in your packet, there's 76 in survey. Okay, so I just need to pull up one visual so I have it here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so this was a survey that was online, and I'm going to go to this one first. Just give me a second.
I took all the surveys.
So there were 2 surveys that went out. These surveys went out they went out in August, and we kept them open all of August, and we closed it the week after Labor Day. So they were up for 4.5 weeks. We had 2 surveys. We had 76 in Sycamore, and then we had another one for Rock Creek Circle. If you recall, we had a neighborhood meeting with 76 in Sycamore earlier in the summer, and we had developed some options and some ideas with that neighborhood, and then we put it out the survey. The Daily Camera picked up on this story, and we had incredible response. So I'm going to show you the responses here. And what we've done in this packet is I didn't do this, the software does it. So the software breaks it out by different people who have taken the survey. So if you remember, we asked this question up front. who are you, right? So the results I'm about to show you are a breakdown of everybody, right? So this is everybody who took the survey. So just a reminder, in this case, these results reflect 62% were Superior residents, 14, and so that's residents at large, meaning they weren't like at this intersection, right? 14% were near this intersection. They said they were near the 76th and Sycamore intersection. 23% were Sagamore residents, and then 1% identified I'm not in Superior, and 1% said I'm a business owner. So we have this broken down in a minute here by Sagamore residents. I'm going to show you the responses just for them, and then I can show you the responses for just the neighborhood residents. But this is everybody. So if I'm doing this right, I believe this is the 189 of everybody. So this is the 189 of everybody. And so they asked about this design, and I'll show you the visuals here in a minute. This is option 1. And so option 1, let me get it pulled up here. Oh, wrong one, sorry. Let me go to here.
I don't have the options.
Yeah, I do, I have them in this drive. 76 design. Oh, go back. There we go. So option 1 was this design. So this design was where we showed them we'd add a center refuge island. We would have new crosswalks. This was a response to trying to keep everything to a similar format in the survey. When we showed you the survey before, we had some drawings, we had some photos, and so we tried to keep all renderings in this. And so this is what we showed as option 1. So then the results of that, let me go back to here. Is this one? So of everybody who took the survey, option 1, they said, yeah, that's something that that we think would improve awareness, and we think it would those features would improve awareness and could happen. We didn't ask, remember, hey, do you want to do this? We asked, do you think this would be effective at doing this, right? And so that's the result of option 1, and so there's more yeses than nos or not sures. Option 2, I'll show all these to you, and then I'll show you the visuals. Option 2 here, you can see this a similar story, not as many as option 1. So option 1 had, I don't know, let's see, about 55 people saying yes. Here's about 45 people saying yes. And this is option 2. And then here's option 3. So the margins are getting closer. So just from a design perspective, so you can see all those. This is option 1. There is option 2, which was just bulb outs. So we just basically said, what about it? Instead of doing this thing in the middle, why don't we add bulb outs to the end? And then option 3 was a raised intersection. So just to review these, option 1 is a center island refuge median that gets installed. Option 2 was adding bulb outs, and then option 3 was what about this raised intersection feature. So that was the options, and these visuals, as you remember, were in the survey, so they just didn't show up in your results. So so then we asked them to rate them. So this is where we said, okay, so do you think they'll be effective? Well, up front, people said, yeah, we think these are all going to be probably effective, right? You see, most of them were yes, and they said these will be effective. So then we asked them, okay, so what about the ranking of those? So you can see here, and I look at the percentages when I was looking at these, right? And so 1 was not very effective, and 5 was very effective. So there's some split about the median islands, about their effectiveness, right? It's kind of half and half. People are kind of not sure if those are going to be effective or not. The narrowing the intersections by building bulb outs, more people thought, this 26% thought, yeah, I'm not so sure those are going to work. Only 11% were spot on. You can kind of see this 22% of maybe kind of range. So most people are kind of in this maybe range. You could add that up to about 45% saying, yeah, maybe those bulb outs will work. The raised intersection, so you had 28% as your largest percent saying, yeah, I'm not sure that's going to work. But if you go all the way other end of the spectrum, you got 24% saying, yeah, okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea, right? And then this one, which is important, don't change the intersection. So just leave it the way it is. Don't mess with it, right? Well, 47% are saying, yeah, not good idea. 1, low priority. And then 26% are saying, yeah, that's a great idea. Just leave it alone, okay? So that's when you ask the question of, should we do something and what should we do? This was, given the cost of these, what would you want to do? Okay. So in this case, the median islands, which is those center islands, right? 32% are saying, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do those. And 21% are saying, no, I don't like that. The narrowing of the intersections, or what we call bulb outs, 28% saying, no, don't like that. 14% saying, yeah, okay, let's do that. And remember what we did here is we went up in cost, so low, middle, and higher cost, right? So we keep going up in cost. So now we're at the highest cost option, and that's the raised intersection. And 41% of the people are saying, nope, not a good idea, right? And 10% are saying, yeah, that's a good idea. So if you go back through here and you look at these percentages, one thing I do when I see these results is I try to find the highest percentage and look where it came out. And so if you look at this, 42% here are saying, don't change the intersection, bad idea. That's a low priority, bad idea to do that. The next one is 41% saying, you know that really expensive raised intersection, bad idea. Okay, and then if I go from there, I bet there's there's some 32%ers. So the next one is, you know what's a really good idea? This option 1 low-cost median island thing. I kind of like that. And then also, I think that you got to do something, right? So this 32% here is, yep, you got to get something done out there. Okay, so that's one way to interpret the results.
Wait a minute. So that 32%, so 5 is hell yeah. So if somebody, that 32% is, that is correct, do not do anything. So you stated that the opposite.
Yes. Yeah.
One most favorable, least favorable. And that one, that's exactly right. It's reversed. Thank you. You're correct. Yes. Yeah. Right. So least favorable is here.
So as you get to know us, we're all super comfortable with the data, right? And so and in fact, these summary graphics are cool and the software does it. I think I can speak for all of us that we all want the raw data ourselves so we can do our own pivot tables and do our own stuff. So we'll talk about that offline, send Alex. But we got having the rawest form of the data put in somewhere where we could all see. These are cool graphics and they're great for people that are watching at home and stuff. But having the raw data. But not surprisingly, with every respondent, I mean, this is what's struggling. And I know we're going to start drilling down, and not surprisingly, the residents of Sagamore are looking at that low cost, no, don't stay there for me. So what concerns me when I first see the data is 32% of the people are saying, hell yeah, median islands, put all your chips in there. The exact same number are saying, hell yeah, heck yeah, do nothing, don't spend any money. And so that's really struggling for us data, right, to know what to do with. But then when you start drilling down, you're going to see the Sagamore residents are going to put all their chips in option 1.
Can I show you?
The adjacent neighborhoods are going to put all their chips and do nothing.
There you go, right? So here's Sagamore, right? So right there, right?
Before we go to the deeper cuts of the data, though, I noticed that the end changed for these last 2 questions, yet we did show that the survey had 100% completion rate. So how did we have 100% completion rate if 13 people didn't answer these last 2 questions?
Sometimes it times out, so they get partial response in here. So this one, because there's multiple things to fill out in here, the way that they track through, they report that they may not have filled in each row. So this one's reporting lower because they may not have filled out every column, every row in this one, because there's multiple things to fill in here.
So then why do we bother reporting at the top that there's 100% completion rate if it seems that's not correct?
Well, you can skip a question and still complete the survey.
Yeah, so you can hit submit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't require all the questions?
No.
It's the survey platform. It's not mine. I would change that if it was up to me, but it's not.
Okay.
And we can get the raw data. I can output in DBF.
I think not a PDF output.
To Excel.
DBF. That can be the database file.
Yes,
DBF.
DBF is
Some
great.
type of anything that we could.
You can play within Excel. I can get you that.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes. So, and the punchline is, if you look at the results by, this is a Sagamore neighborhood, and then you go to the Superior neighborhood, it compounds, it basically adds information, data, to this idea that the residents nearby prioritize.
So let's just walk through that just for the purpose of people that are watching home and for the record. So let's look at, I care about the aggregate, Sagamore, and adjacent, and let's ignore the other.
Okay.
I think you have 5 total data sets, but let's look at those 3.
Okay,
Fair?
so, good. All right, so we just did everybody. Now we're going to do Sagamore. So we have 43 residents who identified themselves as Sagamore. It's worth noting you can only take the survey once based on IP number. If you can get smart and creative and work your way around the IP number, then I can't stop you, but theoretically everybody behaved. So 43 residents of Sagamore.
That's crazy.
Option 1, yep, this is where the center feature, right? That, yes, please do that. I think it would be a good idea. Yes, this idea that you would actually build bulb outs. And then the last one, which is the raised intersection, you're starting to see some not sure show up in here, right? So then when we ask the question about, okay, so you rate these out by option. So median islands, right here, 46% saying heck yeah. That's the heck yeah column, right? 46%. This narrowing of the intersections, this was similar to the Superior, just all survey results, everybody, right? That was hanging out in that raised intersection. The raised intersection got a little more higher. It was a little higher in this category, but you see a little more balance here too, 22 and 17, right? And then here, this idea of not doing anything, heck yeah, only 12%. And over here, 70% saying not acceptable, got to do something out there. So the residents nearby are saying do something, please, as part of this response. And then they like the median island as the 46% is the one that kind of is highest. And then when you introduce the cost to it, in this case, you can see here the results are kind of similar. You can see the darker the green, the higher the response also. It's all kind of an interesting way to kind of see this come through. So don't change the intersection. We know it's cheap, but please don't do that. And then you can kind of see this 16 here and 11 and 12. So it kind of goes lowest cost option, medium, and high. All right, and then Kevin, rightfully so, you asked about one other group. This was... go back. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, guys. So then the other group that you asked about was, I believe...
The 27 in the adjacent neighborhood.
There we go. Okay, thank you. So this is the 27 folks who live in adjacent neighborhoods. Hopefully they got the point that they're not a Sagamore resident. And so here they're saying, yep, that Center Island feature, yep, 55 people saying good. You're seeing a little more balance here. This is kind of fun. You can see the percentages down here. You asked for the numbers. That's the numbers. More balance there. And then this raised intersection, no, right? So now you're seeing, this is one of the first strong no's coming up, which is the non-Sagamore but neighborhood residents saying no about a raised intersection. And then here's, so here when you say which ones don't change this intersection, right? And then 11, here's the breakdown, I guess, of raised intersections. Some saying yeah, some saying no. So there's kind of when you break this down a little bit further, you're slicing very small numbers here, as we all know, but that's what we got. And then lastly, when you add a cost factor into that, right? So when you add a cost factor into that, you can start to see people saying, yep, just kind of leave it, there and then up. So I believe if anybody at home wants to go through this, here's our one business employee owner, and then there was one other one in here that was, I believe...
Non-resident.
Thank you, non-resident. What's also worth noting in this packet is we did get some responses to the survey. So someone was really, a couple people are unhappy, the fact that we didn't have open comment at the end. And so in future surveys, we can add, would you like to provide comments at this time via the survey? What we did, we weren't trying to hold anybody back. What we did is we had an email address that they could email comments to, but there was clearly a preference for adding the comments within the survey there. And then one of the things that came up in the survey that we noted, which is important, the visuals are very strong in decision-making, and we used peer graphics. We just used kind of sample graphics, but in this graphic, there's no bike lane here. So people thought that we were pulling bike lanes out on 76, which couldn't be further from the truth, just to add to the record. So we learned with these surveys that's probably what we should be doing next time when we do these is we need to make sure that, I'm going to just go back here and show you what we think we want to use. We want to use the designs for these surveys. So like, I guess this would be an example one, so let me go in here.
Yeah, I think we talked about this. The problem was we didn't have designs on all three options.
Exactly.
So you wanted to be consistent.
Yeah.
And we were, I mean, what's the cost of, a few grand?
Less than that. Yeah, less than that. But I think just in order to keep the survey, to make sure people are responding to the real designs would be helpful.
And something like this is difficult for the average person to figure out what's going on in this particular one.
That was it, yeah. So it's like, this is easy for us to read. This is probably easier for the community.
Easier to comprehend. Yeah.
But you missed some of the features, and I didn't even use, I'm not perfect. I should have caught the fact that there were no bike lanes in here, but that came up. So you'll see some of the survey comment responses, and I just wanted to make sure that you were aware those are all in there. Okay, all right. So so that's 76.
Well, there's also one comment, I think, at the end.
Just put
an all-way stop in there and call it good.
Did we talk about that?
Yeah, well, Kevin remembers, we talked about this 2-3 years ago. We had that as an option to go ahead and do that. We had a business owner came in and kind of testified against it, and we, at that point, said, no, let's just keep it the way it is. And then we went through this process. The neighborhood actually brought it back and said, we still have to do something.
Okay, so that's the survey results. So the survey results, and I will tell you what I think, and then you'll spend some time with the data, and we'll see what you think, and probably have this conversation in December. But I think as a result of the survey, this option 1, where we have the center islands, clear, and that was to me from the Superior resident at large, the Sagamore resident, adjacent neighborhood residents, appears to be the options that people are leaning toward.
And also that includes the rectangular rapid flashing beacons.
I'll put up the design. I guess that would be helpful. So I think it's this one, this design. So I wish I could get this bigger. I don't know how to do that. There we go. That might be better. So this design with center islands, rectangular rapid flash beacons, bike lanes in this design. So this design and what appears when I read the results to trend, it's the lowest cost option of the options beyond the stop sign. And so this option could be budgeted for next year. There's an interim option that you could do in a couple weeks and take action. And that would involve adding some signs to this intersection, some yield to pedestrian signs. So this is not the long-term solution, clearly, but it's a solution that you can get out there and start getting people to start being more aware. So I've been observing more of these. Another town board member brought this up at our Rock Creek meeting, and I've been going out in other places and seeing them. And they actually are adding signs right on this yellow here. You know that pedestrian, yeah. We're suggesting that you could add one right there, and then you could add one on the opposing side over here. Because remember today, you have, by state law, you have to yield to a pedestrian in this crosswalk, right? But there's no indication.
There's no vertical asset. I mean, guys, I feel like I suggested this or asked for 2 meetings ago.
Yes, and we ordered the signs, but we put them in Akron and Coal Creek.
Okay.
But we do have flashing beacons coming in.
Yeah, that's just.
Let's get 10 of them.
Yeah, I'm going to violate what I said before and suggest I do walk. Anywhere where there's a school, where we're asking kids to cross a road that has more than 1,000 cars, there's obviously a crosswalk, right? So if there's a school bus there and it's a 2-lane road, or more than, if there's a turning lane, because now I'm going to say this, and that would mean that if we create a best practice, I don't think one is necessary on Indiana and Torrey's Peak, because there's a school, there's a bus stop there, because there's probably over 1,000 cars, but there's no left turning lane.
Right.
And those are frankly bigger kids. I mean, that's.
Well, we've just done this over at the North Pool at.
Yeah, it's in the middle of
Hartstrom.
Indiana. Yeah.
We put those up. The caveat we had.
Where do we want them? You're right. Let's order a bunch of them.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is the concern I had 6 months ago, is the neighborhood came to us, said, let's do something, we got to go through a process, I get it. It's just, it's taking a long time, and every one of these that come to us, I want to have an interim solution until we get through the 12-month process, because in that process, we have a risky situation that we're not mitigating.
Okay. And my only caveat with these is they'll be gone in the snow.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to realize we'll have to get more than what we need because they'll be gone.
Remind our drivers to drive around them.
Right.
So I just want to make sure I'm comprehending. We're talking about flashers here, right?
No, it's these,
I'll show you.
these things that get nailed into the ground. They're about this tall. They say yield, and it's the high-vis yellow.
Let me pull up the other one.
I'll probably find one in here somewhere.
Yep, I have it. I just.
So, yeah, I think we'll put those signs in right away, and then we'll continue on with the islands and the other designs of the flashing beacons, take the left turn lane out.
Look at that at the board. So what's the process? All right, so you guys are, the outcome is you're recommending option one, even though the neighbors in the adjacent neighborhood feel,
So
yeah, see that guy?
these signs, this is ultimately what we want in there next year.
Yeah.
Just the
Yeah,
temporary.
you can nail them in with the
Yeah.
rubber pad at the bottom.
So,
What's
yes.
all right, so what is the process? So your staff is going to recommend option one. We've followed the process, we've engaged the community, we have the survey.
Yes.
What's next?
So so what's next is in December, we'd bring back the final design with the cost estimate. But tonight, we're saying we should put out those signs at this
of course.
location, right?
Yeah, and we've included money in the budget for next year.
And that,
So
the money in the budget's for the 2 islands with the buzzer, with the flashing beacons?
it is.
Okay.
Yes.
And that, I think, was in the budget for $100,000.
Right.
Let me just, it's this design, we're going
Yeah.
to tweak out, but this design in the budget next year, but in the interim, the signs.
And this is in the sewer budget, for the $100,000.
Smith.
Smith, yeah. Yeah.
I think we have someone.
Yeah.
Hi. So last meeting, 2 months ago, you guys said all of the same stuff you're saying right now. School has started, and almost daily, people are blowing right by the school bus with the stop sign. So this is something that is urgent at this point. It's scary to be out there with, 5-year-olds who are trying to cross the street. And it's frustrating, super frustrating, to come every 2 months, and 2 months ago, be told something and then sort of brushed off. So really, please do this now. This is important. And it would be really, really bad if a kid got hurt because you guys were taking so long with this.
So,
Number 2, though.
Sorry, can we just engage for a quick sec? So first, I think we're with you. Exactly, because we're taking notes here. Exactly what time does that school bus pick up?
7:23.
Okay, so at 7:15 tomorrow, I'm looking for a head nod that we're going to have a deputy park there until roughly 7:25. There's an affirmative head nod. Now, if there's an emergency, we can't promise a deputy there every day, but you just got a head nod. You will see a deputy there tomorrow morning.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Number 2, 2 months ago, you guys said that you had submitted a request for a grant, but I haven't heard anything about that.
We got notified a couple of weeks ago that we didn't get that grant.
Okay.
So
So is that now, nothing can happen?
no, we anticipate, we knew there was a small probability we get the grant. We went ahead and requested funds for this intersection in the 2020 budget. And the town board has that request, and they'll be acting on it within the next couple of weeks when they adopt the budget.
And what does that mean, like timeline wise?
So that's a great question, because that was going to be my next question to Alex. So once we approve that budget, how fast can we mobilize and build this thing?
Right, well, we can get started with design. We'll have to, spend some money this year if you want it, but it'll probably be next spring before this is constructed, just
So spring of 2020.
before it's constructed, yes.
Okay.
We'll get the signs up, the signs in the middle of the street. We'll get those right away.
And is that something you need the board to
Yeah,
approve
the
as
board
well?
would have to approve that construction contract. It's $100,000.
Yeah, and when does that happen?
So we would see, so we're approving the budget within the next couple of weeks. The budget is just like, doesn't mean we spend the money. We're going to approve the budget at the
28th.
28th meeting. We're going to approve the budget.
We will review it at the October 14th meeting.
Right. So that budget gets approved. Once that's approved, Alex and his staff can do the design without the board approving it. They'll do the design. It'll go out for bid. We'll have a construction contract. And just because of timing and frankly, just because of the weather, I am glad Alex didn't say March, because it won't be March. Realistically, respectfully, it's going to be April, May, maybe even June.
But most likely, if it's all approved
In 2020.
by 2020 start
Right.
of school.
I'd also
we'll
say,
have
just
something in.
giving you just counsel, the neighborhoods that are adjacent from you do not see the urgency here. They were equally as strong saying, don't do anything, as you, maybe not equally as strong, but they were very strong saying, please don't do anything, as your neighborhood was impassioned about, please do this, the Sagamore neighborhood. And so just be aware that there may be some opposition. And so thank you for continuing to come. I say continue, keep it on, and let your neighbors know that this is not a safe situation. You are there every day with kids that are trying to cross. Invite them to watch, have them come to these meetings, talk to them, because if there is, just historically, when there's neighborhood opposition, we're 3. 7 of us, 4 of us need to affirm the construction contract to spend $100,000. If there's significant neighborhood opposition saying a 4-way stop sign could do the exact same thing for $100,000, despite the advice of traffic and safety, Alex and everybody else, the board is the board. So keep on doing exactly what you're doing,
So
which
I
is
guess,
to engage the community.
yeah, no, absolutely. I don't remember why a 4-way stop sign wasn't a good option, honestly. I mean, at this point, we're pretty desperate. We'll take whatever. Was it because of the length of the crossing is so long?
As far as what? As far as...
There's a process that warrants a stop sign. There are traffic conditions and volumes that are required in order for a stop sign to be placed. And you don't meet, the conditions don't meet, the traffic doesn't yield or meet the conditions to put in a stop sign, a always stop sign there. So you don't have enough traffic to actually warrant the stop signs going in.
And that's based on current survey?
That would be based on current volumes, yes.
Okay.
So the reason why that is because when you have volumes that aren't high enough to warrant the stop sign, you end up with low stop sign compliance. So we're just doing studies in other neighborhoods right now where we're seeing people not complying with stop signs. And so we're concerned that when you put in a stop sign that's not warranted, you get a false sense of compliance.
Well, I would, in this case, the volumes on Sycamore are more than the volumes on 76th Street.
But
So this is a case where a four-way stop would make some sense, because the volumes would indicate that Sycamore is the higher volume than 76th Street. And that's why I came to the TSC 2 years ago and said, if you want to make some improvements, here's what you could do.
All right, Alex, so I hate to even ask this question, but given the survey we've just done, do we want to revisit just doing the 4-way stop sign and get something that can be done in the next 2 months and save the town $85,000?
Well, I think we need both. I mean, I wouldn't mind putting a 4-way stop, but we still have the problem that it's a long way to cross. It's a long way. And we need to narrow the intersection because of you're out there for a long time trying to cross. And that would help. But I think narrowing the intersection would still be the way to go. And I would rather move in that direction, and maybe a 4-way stop instead of the flashing beacons may be an option. with the additional.
I think flashing beacons are, like, flashing beacons to me are very good, but, you know, you guys are the engineers here. It's compliance, my guess is a compliance on a flashing beacon, which they sometimes break, but compliance on a flashing beacon is going to far exceed compliance on a stop sign.
It's also going to be kind of a challenge to put in a stop sign now, because we want to do something, and then 9 months from now, change the condition entirely.
And again, I don't like multi-lane four-way stops. Because then you're looking at 6 different vehicles potentially.
Right.
All right, well, let's do
And
that.
the eliminating left turn lanes, we make much simpler.
So when will the vertical guide go up? When can we get that? The vertical thing saying.
The vertical yield sign.
We can get that within a week. Yeah.
Okay, so within a week, we get a vertical guide. In the meantime, we have an affirmative head nod that the police are gonna, at a minimum tomorrow, and hopefully when there's no emergencies, they're gonna do their best to be there.
Yes.
Where this board is committed to, you know, we're giving directional head nodding. It's in the budget. There's gonna be a construction contract. We're shooting for the spring with it's weather in Colorado, right? So I just don't wanna say, you know, it doesn't mean Mother's Day. Realistically, it means June, right? What are you thinking, Carlos?
Does the bus stop right here? Yeah. I'm just wondering about the people passing the bus. If the bus is dwelling here, this is the through lane, this is the left-hand turn pocket. Is it illegal to actually enter this lane when the bus has the sign out? If the bus is dwelling here and it should be stopping, right? Yeah, so that.
Stop on a 6-lane highway.
Yeah,
and
it's still an enforceable offense, right? Yeah. Okay, all right, I'm just checking. I just wanted to make sure.
Test for.
No, well, yeah, our insurance policy is on the line here, so I just wanted to make sure we indemnify these projects, so I just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, so.
So we'll get the yield to ped signs up right away. We'll proceed with narrowing we're putting the islands in, so we eliminate the left turns, and then we'll evaluate four-way stop versus rapid flashing beacons and give you a recommendation at the next meeting and also the difference in costs.
Okay.
Right here, you can't actually see the crosswalk from the other side. And we had talked about remedying that by either bringing it out a little bit further so it's up a little ways, not in that sort of dip right there. In some of the designs,
we pull it east. We pull it west, so it's higher. So we actually are going to take the nose off of this median and bring it out of the ditch where it's white here. That's where it exists today. It's kind of in the drainage pan. We're pulling it a little further west so that it's higher up.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So that's 76th and Sycamore.
Okay.
Okay, so then the other part of the packet is Rock Creek Circle. So let me make sure I got that right. Okay, so we had a neighborhood meeting in advance of this one, and Neil was at that one as well. And as a result of that meeting, we said we'd do a survey. And so now this survey is more tied to the results, or not the results, but the shortlisted, I guess is the way to say that, from the neighborhood meeting. So the idea with these surveys, just so you know how they sequence in, was that you had a requirement that you get 50% buy-in from neighborhoods as part of these projects. And these surveys are intended to kind of start doing that, so you get feedback about that. And so that's how this fits in the process. So you could use this as your action item based on what we're going to show you. So of everybody, all 571 people who took this, half of them were the Superior residents at large. 37% were neighborhood residents off of Rock Creek Circle, and then 11% were Summit residents. So this 11% are kind of right front the Rock Creek Circle intersections that we were discussing with them. At our meeting, we also had some neighborhood residents as well. So this one, we probably don't need the visuals for this one, but if you want them, let me know. The first question we had was about, do they support reducing the speed limit change from 30 to 25? And so this, once again, is everybody. Didn't break it out by who at this point, but you got about 50 saying yes and a lot less percent saying no. Oh, and they're pretty close. I guess 40% saying no. If you want to look at the numbers, the numbers are here. So there's kind of, I don't know, it's pretty close in terms of the speed limit change itself. The next one was about the speed feedback signs. So those are signs that post the speed and give you what speed you're going. Everybody liked those. Not everybody, that's not fair, 71%, right? So that had some yes support, 71.7% to be exact. This idea of narrowing the intersections, so this was basically taking a design that would narrow the intersections. I'll show you some photos of this in a minute. That got some no's, so we're at 45% no and 41% yes, so kind of half and half. Raised crosswalks, so this idea that we would do some raised crosswalks, not intersections, just crosswalks. And so you can see here, we got about 51% saying yes, 40% saying no. You remember this line of questioning? So each row here is the potential tool out of the toolbox. So speed limit changes here. You can see, and once again, 1 is no and 5 is heck yes. So 31% to 24% is a spectrum there. Speed feedback signs, you're starting to see a little more deviation towards, yeah, that's good, 10% compared to 32%. Narrowing the intersections, now it reverses, 30% and the no, 5% in the, yeah, that sounds good. Raised crosswalks, you can see kind of the ends of this here, right? 27% to 28. And then don't make any changes. Once again, you can see this here, right? So this is everybody, right, at large. All right, so what you're probably interested in next is the cost piece, right? So when you start applying cost to here, once again, the lowest cost all the way to the highest cost, right? So the lowest cost options are having the highest polling. As you start getting into the higher cost options, you start getting to higher polling. So that's everybody. So then what about, I guess we can show this the same way. So what about the Summit residents, the folks who live in the Summits, that front Rock Creek Circle, who took this, right? So there were 60 of those folks who took this. And so they're saying, yep, I like that speed limit change. So that's different.
I'm really concerned about this instrument.
Okay.
Because I wanted to call attention to the fact that 55% of the people said, yep, great idea, change the speed limit.
Yes.
But now once we go into the options, I'm scratching my head based on what people are doing. So I just want to sort of pause and say,
okay, this
graphic pleases me tremendously. It tells us exactly, anytime, yes to no is 2 to 1, it tells you what the right decision is. But wait, now let's keep scrolling.
Before we scroll, I would just really like in the future, rather than showing all the reports, first one cut, then another cut, then another cut, can we just cut this chart into, of the 55% who support this, here's the chunk that's Summit residents, here's the chunk that's neighbor residents, and just do a stacked bar? Yeah. Because that would make it a lot easier to see who thinks what.
Yeah, the instrument is not going to be able to do that. That's why you and I want the data.
Yeah, Excel is what I want.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
We could do it. That's right.
I'm happy to make those charts.
Same.
Cool. I agree. And just, I'll just add one thing. I'm doing, this is just the raw output, so I'm saving you money. But if we want to do it.
No, right. We're not asking you to spend more time. Just load the raw data on our shared data sites, whatever it's called.
Okay.
Figure it out.
So keep going. Or do it?
Well, I guess just while we're also talking about stuff with both this survey and the other one, I would also really like to see something at the beginning of each of these that says, do you perceive there to be a problem on this road? I assume that I drive this, I think there's a big problem, but I would be curious what % of people think there's a problem and are saying, I like this option or I don't like this option, versus are just saying, I don't like any of the options because I don't think there's a problem.
Okay.
That's good. And then you can slice it to be of people who perceive there to be a problem. Here's what you read.
Exactly.
Because if you don't perceive there to be a problem,
you're going to be the person saying do nothing in every case.
Yeah, it's good data.
Okay. Anything else?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So yes on the speed limit changes. And once again, just so everyone at home, this is the Rock Creek Circle residents, the Summit residents who live right in front of Rock Creek Circle. Speed limit change, yes, Kevin just talked about that one. So the next one here is speed feedback signs. Yes, 2 to 1 here. Yes, those are good. How about narrowing the intersection? Pretty close, right? So I don't know if that's a clear directive there, kind of half and half about narrowing the intersection. What about these raised crosswalks? What about those? Half and half again, maybe a little more toward no, right? All right, so then you ask them about which ones they favor. So speed limit changes here, 30% are on the no end here, right? And then
Right, there's just something wrong with the instrument. Either in the meeting, people got confused, but.
well, hold on, before we attack the instrument, let me see if I can defend it. So in the first questions, we asked them, do you think that this would work, right? So let me go back to the question, Kevin. So let's go back to this one, right?
Not attacking, I'm looking for opportunities to improve the instrument.
All right. So speed limit change, right? So would you support doing it, right? So would you support reducing the speed limit, all right? So there's the yes, okay. So then when you ask the question a different way, so I'm just going back, when you say, okay, now you can look at these all together, not just like, yeah, I support speed limits, but when you look at it all together, you make them think through a decision when there's multiple factors, that's where you start to get variation in their responses. So that's the difference in the line of questioning. And why we ask this line of questioning is you start to frame up a series of choices versus an independent one.
Where I found this question, to Kevin's point, a little problematic, and people may have gotten confused, is we had 5 options, as well as rank it on a scale of 1 to 5. And okay. I'll admit, when I took this, I'm one of those who I think probably did it wrong, where I thought that each of these had to have a 1 through 5. I didn't know that I could put 5 for 4 of them and 1 for another. Right. I went through and I said, this is my 5 choice, this is my 4, this is my 3. So I did a ranking rather than a rating, okay. Which I recognize the question says rate.
And we even talked about the fact we changed the word from
right
to rank.
Right. Right. But right. Still I got in there. And
right.
Which is right.
Yeah. Most favorables. So that could be a variable in here. The interesting part of this, though, is, you know, when someone says, okay, you can rate these, and so when people were rating, 18 said that this was least favorable, and 11 said it was most favorable, and because they're starting to look at them all together.
Yeah, and I actually think this provided a lot more insight than I expected, because it's more of, what do you actually think is going to be successful here? I mean, I'm all for speed limit changes, but I don't think they're going to make a big difference, right? So I would have said yes on the speed limit change, and I think I stuck a 3 on the speed limit change as actually having a material impact. Yeah. As you go further down, narrowing the intersections and the raised crosswalks, that's where you're going to see a measurable impact on the intersection. Whereas the binary yes, no, yeah, of course I said yes on all of these, but then when you're actually forced to rank them in terms of what is their effectiveness, I think we're getting the exact type of response that we expected. People are for the speed limit change, but they don't think they're going to have a big impact.
I just don't know that people read that correctly, because if people are reading it as what it's intended, which is how much will this make a difference, do not make any changes. Everyone should always say that that's a 1. No matter whether you want changes or not, that won't make an impact. Do you see what I'm saying?
Unless you think that it's fine, you want something in your neighborhood, right?
But I think it's fine. I would still, if the question is, what will calm traffic on Rat Creek? It's fine, won't calm traffic anymore. Maybe I want it because I don't think there's a problem, but it's not going to have an increased calming effect.
Yeah, and don't take any of this the wrong way. This is the first time we've done this survey.
Hindsight is 20/20.
So
it's very easy for us to.
If we were, I feel like the fact we have a committee means is a good thing. The fact that we have a committee that people show up and we have people from there is a great thing. Now that we have a survey, and we're like, this is all great. We're trying to get us from, a 9 on the 1 through 10 scale to a level 10. Right. So this is all great. I super appreciate it. But I need to be aware of the time. But I want to know sort of what's the next step. Do you have, what is the next step? And as we've sliced the data for this as, there's 2 just as the others. There's the, there's the residents that they need to be able to pull out and make a left without feel like they're getting mowed over, and their kids need to go to their friend's house
Right.
across the street without feeling complete danger.
Exactly.
And, I'm not suggesting the adjacent neighborhood shouldn't have a voice in this, but I'm mostly concerned about the kind of Summit residents that are
Yes.
getting in and out of this all day, every day. So what's next here? We had the neighborhood meeting, we've
Yes.
got the survey.
Yes, thank you. So what's next here is something we previewed with them at the meeting that came up in the survey. So the first thing would be to do speed feedback signs in the corridor. And so I believe if we have this right, let me just check in Google Earth here. There's a sign, speed sign right up here. Yeah. So the corridor is posted 30 miles. Yeah, there's one right here. There's one there,
Yeah,
and I believe.
We've got, it's classic. We have Laura Neal's election signs up.
Perfect. We know when this video is.
Okay, so the posted limit today, I believe, is 30. And we think that the posted limit could be 25, and you go to speed feedback signs. So that would be one recommendation. And that was, if you look at the hard copy results from the community meeting, that was something that rose to the top of the list. So one of those here, and then another one that was, I believe, right here. So those are speed feedback signs. There was another one coming up the hill. So there's 3 or 4 of these, lower the speed limit and then speed feedback signs in the corridor. The other thing that was recommended was to look at this intersection and look at potentially pulling back the no parking a little bit further. When you're pulling out of this intersection here, it's very difficult to see oncoming. And so the idea was that we could pull this parking back a little bit. So that would be our second recommendation. So that would be some more, maybe striping that out versus the sign, just so we get a little more compliance. The third thing that was brought up was revisiting this parking
The no parking.
Yeah, the no parking restrictions along this
No
corridor.
nighttime parking.
Yeah, yes, allow the nighttime parking, right? So that was also brought up, and that would be considered. And then we would like to start with a design for here, some enhancements for here. This doesn't show up in the aerial. There's some work that's been done here. But these residents of this neighborhood were interested in that part being raised, that crosswalk being raised. So not a full intersection, and not, I think there was one that had an island median, but to Kevin's point earlier, it's raised crosswalks, right? And so that would be the design move investment for next year. So I'll summarize that now that I've given you the full story. So in the short term would be speed feedback signs and lower the speed limit. It would be to reconfigure this design of the parking here, revisit parking restriction, and then next year working on a design for raised crossing.
So I think if we had a recommendation from you and Alex to this year, change the speed limit and install speed feedback signs, then I haven't heard that as a recommendation, then I think it's appropriate for the TSC to have a conversation about, is that something that we recommend? And then this feels like the materiality thing that should go to the board. But it's, to me, I don't think we should be reducing a speed limit, adding speed feedback without going to the board for a properly, not that this isn't properly noticed, but a well-noticed full board meeting, quick conversation, and it goes. And then for next year, we talk about your recommendation on the raised crosswalk. So now I ask the question, is it staff's recommendation that we, based on the data we have, based on the survey results, that we do these two things, change the speed limit and add speed feedback signs?
I think when we looked at the percentile speeds, I mean, especially on the other end, they were fairly low. And on this end, we want it lower because it's a downhill stretch. We have a curve. We have it posted at an advisory speed of 25, and we're still not getting great compliance. So I think a speedback sign here in a 25 mile an hour zone, well, for the whole road would be would be a good thing. And you have a lot of turning moments. This isn't a roadway where you're traveling the entire length. I mean, you're only traveling half the distance. So you don't need to have those types of speeds the whole way.
Yeah, I think everybody generally agrees, and I think the people in the South would be thrilled. So I'm personally, so I'll go first. I'd be, as an interim measure, hopefully not interim, but as a short-term measure, which would eventually be permanent before we did the raised crosswalk, I'd be supportive of that. But I want to hear from Laura and Neil if you're supportive, and if you agree it should go to the board.
I'll go first. I mean, so reducing the speed limit, I definitely agree that it needs to go to the board. The speed feedback sign, I feel like the TSC should be able to do that on its own.
Well, we have a temporary one. We've got are we talking about the temporary, or are we talking about the?
For the speed feedback?
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about the permanent one. That's the one we
Permanent
showed in the survey.
It costs a lot of money. And I want to be careful, and I will tell you that the one, they could have the one that's on Torrey's Peak, and we could put one that's, not intended for
This one?
the one on Torrey's Peak
Oh, yeah.
is it's just too big for what it is. I want to make sure that if we're selecting a speed feedback sign, it needs to fit the character of the neighborhood. And I'm not knocking, I'm grateful to have one on Torrey's Peak because I live in that neighborhood. It doesn't fit the character of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Especially because on this street, the views are really stunning. This is where you get the straight shot of the
Right.
mountains.
So it means we're going to spend another couple grand. Well, I don't know what they cost. but-
$5,000.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know what our delegation of authority is with respect to spending money at the TSC. So absent that, I'm fine with everything going to the board. I'm fully in support of reducing the speed limit and the speed feedback signs. I was under the impression that TSC had some latitude to spend money on its own, but I might be wrong.
Well, we had a comment from a board member a few weeks ago that there was some concern. So I'm trying to be respectful.
Okay,
Yeah.
then, yeah.
I'm fine with it going to the board. One thing that I really wanted to see that didn't come up in the survey is flashers at the intersections. In my opinion, that's particularly what we need, given the sun considerations on this road.
Thank you for bringing that up. So that was part of the toolkit that we presented at the neighborhood meeting, but based on the input from the neighborhood meeting, we only shortlisted some that went into the survey.
Okay.
So following the process, we have a neighborhood meeting. So this is like the truest we can get to the process, at least how it's outlined.
Sure.
And so that's why it didn't get carried through to the survey.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And while I get that we're going to have the speed feedback, we've had comments, maybe not survey comments, but anecdotal comments that people are speeding coming up the hill, which is weird. It's sort of also consistent with what we saw elsewhere. For some reason, people like to gun it going up hills.
That's right.
And so it's hard when you're coming up the hill and you're trying to make that left and there's cars. We put that island there and, we'd hope to slow people down, but I think we need to be aware of slowing people down. So I think there needs to be three things. Well, really two things. Number one, agreement from this that we're going to the board with, in the stop sign, we had to do a warrant, so that's why we paused. But even the removal of the stop sign required a warrant. This doesn't require a warrant study. This is, the TSC has made a determination that we're going to immediately and hopefully permanently change the speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. Second, we have activated staff to, I want to make sure I have your full attention, guys, on this.
Yeah. Sorry.
Second, we've activated staff to get the feedback signs. And third, we've also activated staff for a recommended redesign that will come to the board for some construction approval. That will be a raised crosswalk, narrowing, whatever. And I have mixed feelings about where the raised crosswalk should be, but I'm not sure we have time to talk about it. Because if you put the raised crosswalk,
Go on here, Kevin. If you
I want to make sure it's at a place where, I want to encourage kids walking to school, walking to the Safeway, and just, are you putting it on the right side? I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah, that's a good question. The proper side, yeah. At the neighborhood meeting, there was interest in having it on the west side here, and I think there was this kind of notion also of like coming up the hill, if you have it here, are we going to get people, and when it's icy or snowy, starting and stopping on that hill here, and at least it's a little flatter here?
Yep.
Right, so that they're yielding here, because when the idea is people yield to pedestrians and crosswalk with a higher level of compliance. If they're yielding here, they're starting on a little more of a grade.
I think if that's not something we need to just decide today, if you're making a series of design recommendations, I think you guys can
We'll go through that. Yes.
Bring to the TSC, and then eventually it'll have to go to the board for
That's great.
construction contract.
And I would actually suggest, I think a valuable aspect is to re-engage the neighborhood. Once we've come up with some ideas, if we're already moving forward with the speed reduction and the speed feedback signs, we met some of the near-term criteria, but we can move forward with a longer engagement on what do the summit and the nearby residents want to see in terms of, permanent infrastructure.
2 points. The one was that the 85th percentile speeds were lower than the posted limit. And if you follow the national guidance, when you do that study, you're supposed to put it, whatever speed it ends at, 85th percentile speed is how you're supposed to actually post the speed.
Yeah.
I understand, but it's not because people, in this case, nobody's doing anything wrong. We designed the road incorrectly. Usually you're the road was just designed incorrectly for the neighborhood. I agree. This road is perfectly safe to drive 29 miles an hour on.
Agree. And I was going to make a connection. You could actually, the speed reduction is warranted based on the counts the volumes we took. So you can sleep at night saying we're actually reducing speed because we actually have done countermeasures out here to reduce the limit. Because if you remember that Alex and you did some traffic calming work out here already in this corridor. And it actually has brought down speeds that we measured this summer, or I guess
From years ago.
right. And so there is justification now to reduce the speed. I had one thought, just in terms of keeping everybody in the community kind of not having to go to 10 meetings and kind of putting a bow on this year. What if the December meeting that we're going to have we would notice it that, for all these neighborhoods that we spoke to this year, and we do a wrap up of all the things that we've decided and that are going to happen that have happened this year, that are going to still happen this year, and what's going to happen next year, so that each of these neighborhoods gets a 20-minute block, and we, in presentations, show all the things that we've been talking about. And then that evening, if there's some decisions that are coming back to you that evening, then they know they get that update. And so that way, and maybe if we even wanted to hold, I'm going to stop there, but that would be one way where we could have 20-minute blocks for each of these neighborhoods, say, here's your update of where we are, and we could notice it that way as a kind of a 2019 end of the year summary.
You're suggesting this for the December TSC?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I mean, don't we currently do that in that we always do the current requests update at the end of the meeting? I realize we may be out of time for it today, but.
I was thinking about noticing it in a way to the community to say, hey, we've reached out to all your neighborhoods during the course of this year, and we're going to be talking about kind of what the status is of your neighborhood / what's going to be, what was approved for next year, and just the status of your applications.
Personally, I'm in support of it. I mean, just to put an end point on, a survey that people filled out in September and not knowing what happened after it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I agree.
Okay. And just to give you an update, so we do have 3 other requests in process where we have petitions that have been turned in. Riverbend is one, and we're collecting data. Yarrow Circle, we've already collected the data, so next step, we need to get back with those folks and show them the results and potentially schedule a neighborhood meeting for Yarrow Circle. Torrey's Peak, we also have received a petition. We haven't yet scheduled the count. So
Torrey's Peak, where did you receive that?
And I think it's the Torrey's Peak. That's between
Up by Snowmass.
Rock Creek Circle. Keep going. Up. Yeah, right there. Isn't that Torrey's Peak that comes over?
This.
No, the other one.
That's Castle Peak.
That one.
Oh, yeah.
So that piece of Torrey's Peak?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a little biased here, but if you're going to look at Torrey's Peak, why not go up where people are coming down from Snowmass, closer to the school, up a little bit?
You go
I think this is what got
up
requested.
over here. It continues around the school. You mean the whole, we did your neighborhood already. This,
Oh, that.
Yeah, that was 8 years ago, Alex. Time flies, man.
but yeah, I believe it's this one.
That's the section of the resident.
Yeah, and we do have an opportunity here, right here, to put a raised pedestrian crossing, but, and we may get with them and look at that whole neighborhood rather than just this particular, because this is another shortcut here.
Yeah.
And there, so both of those streets are kind of shortcut, get a lot of traffic. So we'll get traffic and speed data on both those roads that connect.
And then just thinking about the timeline, right? So we have a report back to the Pitkin neighborhood at the end of this month. And then we're going to pull together the list for 76th, for Rock Creek Circle, and then we're going to bring you back the Pitkin data and all in December. So we probably won't have any of these meetings. They're difficult to schedule these meetings during December, as you can imagine. So Yarrow Circle, Riverbend, and Torreys, in terms of having a neighborhood meeting, will likely not happen until 2020.
Which part of Riverbend are we talking about here? Is it the part?
There's two Riverbend questions.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think that one's between Seabird and Indiana.
So this is one Riverbend, right? This one here.
Okay.
There's also the one that connects to Akron.
Let me do that one.
So I think they both came in. This one, this is Akron, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're complaining as well as Riverbend coming down here.
Okay. So those,
That's Seabird.
just so that no one gets caught off by guard by the delay there, those, I mean, it's very difficult to have meetings in December.
Yeah.
And people are out and it's a busy time of year. So those meetings are probably happening in January, February. Okay.
There's no risk. We decided to not take the December 2nd meeting. We don't need that.
You know, last Matt said he was going to move the TSC to try to give the December 2nd to the board. I don't know what the timing is for the TSC
I thought he then
meeting.
said he was not doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
it hasn't been in a digest.
There's just some confusion.
Yeah.
So just work with Matt on that.
Yeah.
We have a lot to do.
I know. You got a lot on your agenda.
Great, you guys did really nice job here. It's just, don't take the desire to process is, the process is light years better than we were. We got to just be aware from residents that are coming in saying, oh my gosh, we've been at this for 2 years. So.
And I appreciate all the time your candor. I wish more people would be upfront like you are, and you don't hold the punches, and I love it.
No, not so much.
No, I love it. So thank you.
And you've got 3 data monkeys on the board, so.
I
Yeah,
know.
we
I know.
don't like it.
Well, and now I know for next time what to do, and it's going to be really helpful. And I think we have feedback from the community as well on this survey of what did not work well, and so we're going to get better at that, guaranteed.
Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.